Live every day as if it were the last, because before you know it, time goes past and life's just not that long. Tell all you love that you love them so, because even if you do, they might not know, and one day we'll all be gone.
Daniel from Martineztown was my only Albuquerque friend ever to visit me on my family farm in Illinois. Daniel was 22. It was summer 1984. Daniel came to visit me to get away from the drugs in Albuquerque. Daniel met my dad. My mother had died 2 years before, and Daniel's first night there, he and I walked 4 miles under the bright moon. Daniel told me he wished he could be as open as I am. I showed Daniel his bedroom that first night. I went into my bedroom. I heard Daniel get up and go to the bathroom down the hall. And when he was going back to his room, I asked him if he wanted to lie down beside me in my bed. Daniel came into my room. He lay down for an instant, and then he got up and went to his room. The next day, Daniel told me he felt like screaming last night. My dad, who slept downstairs, would have freaked out if Daniel had screamed. One day, Daniel called me into the bathroom. He was sitting on the stool. He had a magnificent, naked, huge heart-on. Daniel was offering his cock to me to suck, but I did not suck his cock. And later I explained to Daniel why I had not sucked his cock. I told Daniel I am attracted to him, but I knew how changeable he was. I did not want him to think less of me. I did not want him to think less of himself. I did not want him to think less of our sex if I had sucked his cock. Daniel worked some in my dad's business driving trucks. Daniel had part in a local theater play. I introduced Daniel to many people there in our area of Illinois. Daniel and I went to a nude beach, a clothing optional beach in Wisconsin. I told him how attracted I was to him. Yes, I wanted to have sex with him, but not if he would have shame and guilt afterward. I want our sex, I wanted our sex to bring us closer as friends and not become something he would later wish he had not done. And after Daniel returned to Albuquerque, he did drugs. He got arrested on drug-related charges. Sadly, Daniel did many years locked up. May 31st, 2011, when Daniel was 49, he visited me here. He told me he wanted sex with me for the first time, but not a relationship. Daniel said, if I told anyone, he would kill me and maybe kill himself. I told Daniel I want to celebrate sex with a friend, not keep it as a poison secret to keep him from killing me and himself. He and I did not have sex that day. We never had sex. We talked about his experiences in Illinois 27 years before. And when Daniel walked out my door that day, May 31st, 2011, he said, I love you. Maybe the only time he had ever said that since he and I met 39 years earlier when he was about 10 years old. And 2 days later, Daniel was dead. He was murdered on the street, on Broadway. I was absolutely devastated. I deeply loved my dear, close friend, Daniel. And I dedicate this program to Daniel. For millions of years, dead plants, dead animals became coal, oil, natural gas underground. And now the burning of that coal, the oil, the natural gas, releases huge amounts of carbon into the Earth's atmosphere, causing the climate crisis. We each need to change now to enjoy living simply on much less, to save plant, animal, and human life on Earth. At least 44,000 Palestinians murdered in Gaza, and many more than 44,000 murdered that we know of were trapped under the rubble of the buildings that U.S. weapons given to Israel destroyed. And those many thousands, possibly 150,000 under the rubble, their bodies rotting with rats and flies. Tens of thousands of Palestinians injured, blind, paralyzed, amputated arms or legs, severely burned. One Palestinian young boy with both of his hands destroyed by Israel and by U.S. weapons. Billions of dollars of U.S. weapons this government sent to Israel to mass murder. That child, whose both hands were destroyed, asked his father, "When I get big, will I grow hands?" Most of the tens of thousands of Palestinians murdered are women and children. Thousands of Palestinian children, hundreds of thousands of Palestinian children, traumatized by exploding bombs, living in constant fear of being murdered, day after day, night after night, constant fear of being murdered. If you pay federal income taxes, you're paying for hell for those children, those mothers, those fathers, those grandparents. Absolutely hell. Some children who survive may realize that bloody revenge against Israel and the United States is not the answer, but many surviving children will hate the United States and hate Israel and will want bloody revenge. Parents, if you want your children to be open and honest, are you always open and honest with them? Do you ever ask them to lie for you about anything? If you want your children to be dependable, do you keep your promises to them and to other people? If you want your children to apologize and ask forgiveness when they wrong you, do you apologize? Do you ask forgiveness when you wrong them? Dads and mothers, if you want them to be warm and affectionate, do you hug both your sons and your daughters often with deep feeling? How can you lecture your kids not to use street drugs if you're hooked on booze, junk food, Valium, or cigarettes? And never demand your children to obey you with no questioning. When parents teach kids to follow orders with no questioning, those kids often become soldiers who murder on command with no conscience. In Auschwitz, Vietnam, Iraq, Chechnya, Afghanistan, Ukraine, Gaza. Teach kids by our own lives to question deeply everything, to follow their conscience, and to love and to do good to all people, including our enemies. After my mother died, I'm glad my dad did not reject me. I'm glad my dad did not disown me for being the most well-known, openly gay man and nudist in that farm community where I grew up in Illinois. My many, many controversial, sincere letters published in the local newspaper there did not cause my dad to reject me, to disown me, even though he was so afraid of what other people think and say. I'm glad that my mother took me from an early age as a little boy to many funerals and visitations for neighbors and friends who died. When I was 6 or 7, my great-uncle Clem, in his 80s, died. My mother and I went to his funeral. Before his casket was closed, the mortician asked if anyone wanted to come up for a final viewing. I did. My mother went with me. And that started a tradition for me. When my mother died in 1982, 42 years ago, I was the last person before her casket was closed. I kissed her. And when my beloved Don died at 25 in 1989 from a car crash, I was the last person, and I kissed him before his coffin was closed. When my dad died in 1994, I was the last person, and I kissed him before his casket was closed. I love the song, "Save the Last Dance for Me." Dance with whomever, but save the last dance for me. We all die sooner or later, and I'm so glad my mother did not shield me from death and funerals. I've gone to dozens of funerals and visitations. I'm so glad my mother welcomed my being open and honest with her about my being gay, even though she told me she had never known there were gay people in the world before I came out to her when I was 31 in 1976, soon after I first had sex with a man here in Albuquerque. A few years later, my mother told me she would like to be a mouse in the corner to watch me have sex with a man. I wish that had happened, but sadly it never did. I'm glad I could be open with my mother about my sex with men. And sadly, millions of sons and daughters, gay, bi, straight, cannot imagine their mothers being that open and curious to watch their sons and daughters having sex. I'm so glad that my mother treasured truth. She hated all lies. She hated all bullshit. If I had lied to her about anything, she would have been very disturbed. Why do many sons and daughters, even as adults, hide their feelings, hide their actions from their parents? Many people hide the truth and cover up with lies if, when they were kids, they feared punishment and loss of love from parents and other adults if they told the truth. Imagine standing outside casinos or standing outside certain fundamentalist churches and asking the fathers and the mothers coming out from those casinos or from those fundamentalist churches this question: if you had a son and had to choose between either having your son join the military, go to war, kill men, or having your adult son tell you he enjoys sex and romance with men, which would you prefer? Which would you choose if you could choose one or the other? Sadly, many, if not most parents, would prefer their son going to war and killing men if they knew their son would come home alive and not injured. Murdering men and women and kids instead of being in love and making love with men. Crazy, crazy, absolutely evil. We all will die. And in some ways, I hate to think about it. As long as I'm in good health and the world is halfway livable, I want to live. By living healthy in every way, every day, we can greatly improve our chances of a long, healthy life until the day we die. But accidents happen. How well I know. Violence happens. And tomorrow is not guaranteed to anyone on earth. If you're 7 years old, 37, 87, 107, no guarantees of tomorrow for anyone on earth. Sooner or later, we all die. Refusing to think about death does not make it go away. Refusing to talk about death does not make it go away. Refusing to prepare for death does not make death go away. We need to put one or more persons we trust, who are close to us, in charge of making decisions for our care if and when we cannot make those decisions ourselves. We need to tell them, these trusted friends, clearly what kind of medical treatment we want and what kind of medical treatment we do not want when we're dying. We need to tell them how comfortable we want to be, how we want people to treat us when we're dying, what we want our loved ones to know. 5 wishes. I highly recommend this. 5 wishes. I filled out my copy over 6 years ago in 2018. It's a legal document for anyone 18 and older in New Mexico and most states when it is signed, witnessed, and dated. And to get it from the internet, go to 5wishes.org. 5wishes.org. Fill it out. Make sure your persons in charge know where you keep it, and give them a filled out photocopy for them to keep. Millions of people have used 5 wishes. Millions of people. It's available in 30 languages and in Braille. If you're close to death, if you're in a coma, not expected to recover, if you have permanent and severe brain damage, do you want life support treatment? I don't. How and where do you prefer to die? In a hospital or at home? I want to die at home. Do you want your doctor to give you medicine to relieve your pain, even if that means you will be drowsy or sleep more than you would otherwise? Well, if my pain is severe, I want something to help the pain. Do you want certain people with you when you die? Yes, my closest friends. Do you want your friends, family, and others to forgive you for when you have wronged them? I surely do. Do you want family, friends, and others to know that you forgive them for when they have wronged you? Yes, I surely do. Do you want all your family to make peace with each other? All my friends to make peace with each other before I die? Yes, I do. Do you want everyone involved to respect your wishes even if they do not agree with your wishes? Yes, I do. Do you want to be cremated or buried? I want to be buried. Where do you want your body or ashes buried? And as I have a plot at the San Jose de Armijo Cemetery on the west side of Albuquerque, on Arenal, west of Old Coors, a beautiful dirt cemetery, graves much cheaper than the large grass cemeteries, and no vault, no liner required as often they're required in grass cemeteries. Vaults and liners are very expensive. I don't want that money wasted. How do you want to be remembered? I want to be remembered as a faithful friend, a lover of truth, a long-time strong activist for peace and justice and against war. I want to be remembered as someone who enjoyed immensely living simply, someone who enjoyed immensely my strong romantic attraction for certain men. Do you want to donate body organs or your whole body to science? What songs, what readings, or message, person speaking at your memorial service, if you choose to have a memorial service? Religious or not religious? For me, definitely not religious. Do you want money contributions to go to a special cause or organization? Many, many important questions to fill out in this 5 wishes. Go on the internet to 5wishes.org, O-R-G. Millions of people have used this. It's so clear, so simple, and it's a legal document in New Mexico and in most states. Let your loved ones know for sure exactly what you want when you die. If that's tomorrow or 50 years from now. If you change your mind, tear up the old copy and fill out a new form. I urge you, take time and thought to let your closest loved ones know what you want when you're dying. I enjoy living in my sunny, bright 9.5 foot by 12 foot home, 114 square feet, 6 windows. I've lived here over 14 years. On many winter days, sunshine warms my home. 6 windows. My home is one room in the house of my friend. He's had me mail my check for rent directly to the organization Right Sharing of World Resources. Right Sharing of World Resources gives many thousands of dollars to women's cooperatives, agricultural cooperatives, sewing cooperatives in India, Africa, Guatemala. My friend has me mail directly. I don't give the rent money to him, never have since I moved in. He has me mail the check directly to Right Sharing of World Resources. This year, $320 each month, instead of paying him rent. I have no right to a much larger home while many millions worldwide have no home. Many thousands in Albuquerque have no home. The bigger the house, the more materials were used to build it, the more stuff bought to fill it. The bigger the house, usually the more energy used to heat it or to cool it, causing more poisoned air and more climate crisis. The bigger the house, the more repairs to do, the more time spent cleaning it. Life has more important, more interesting things to do than be a janitor for a big house that I do not want and I sure as hell do not need. The bigger the house, the more destruction to Mother Earth and the more unfair to our sisters and brothers all over the world who have no decent shelter of their own. If I were given the most luxurious mansion in this city, I would not keep it. And I mean that. I would be ashamed, absolutely ashamed as hell, to own it and to live in it. If you go to the hospital as a patient, do not give away your body and your life to doctors and nurses. Stand up for yourself. If loved ones go to the hospital, stand up for them, especially if they can't stand up for themselves. Watch carefully everything that is done in that hospital room. Question politely. Don't be mean. Don't be crazy cruel. Just question politely everything if there's any questions about something that you wonder about, that the doctors, the nurses are doing. If you give in to everything they tell you, and if you do not question, you or your loved ones are more likely to die in that hospital. And we all make many mistakes. We all make many mistakes. And doctors and nurses, especially when they're working long hours under much stress, make many mistakes, killing thousands of people across the country every year in the United States. People not living healthy, people not eating healthy kills many more thousands. People not living healthy, with not enough sunshine, not enough exercise, not enough sleep, people not eating healthy is why most people are in the hospital in the first place. Take charge of your body. Take charge of your health. It's the only body you or I will ever have. You can't trade it in for a new model. I hope and I aim never to take prescription drugs again. I took them a year and a half ago after the hit and run I suffered, but I hope and aim never to take prescription drugs again the rest of my life. I hope, I aim never to be in a hospital bed as a patient again the rest of my life. But time will tell. I can never know or say for sure. After the Gulf War, a large Albuquerque church held a rally celebrating U.S. victory in Iraq. And I went to that rally and held my sign strongly opposing war. A man there told me, "Blessed is he who takes your little ones and dashes them against the rocks." And that is an awful, actual verse from the Psalms in the Bible. Blessed is he who takes your little ones and dashes them against the rocks. Some Christians believe the Bible is the perfect Word of God. What damn bullshit. Some Muslims believe the Quran is the perfect Word of God. What damn bullshit. Some Muslims use verses from the Quran to justify atrocities. And some Christians use verses from the Bible to justify evil U.S. wars. And I highly recommend the great book in our city library entitled The Atheist Muslim, A Journey from Religion to Reason by Ali A. Rizvi. Ali, A-L-I. Maybe I'm not pronouncing it correctly. A, middle initial, last name Rizvi, R-I-Z-V-I, in our library. The Atheist Muslim, A Journey from Religion to Reason. Honest, heartfelt, and personal, that book. And sadly, both the Bible and the Quran contain many terrible, bloody verses advocating war and violence and other evils in God's name. I was a sincere Christian preacher 58 years ago, but I am no longer a believer in God. I identify deeply with the author of The Atheist Muslim in his long journey from religion to reason. I aim never to allow the Bible or the Quran or any book to turn off my mind and to harden my heart. Millions of men, including many who are in love and make passionate love with their wives or their girlfriends, millions of men are terrified, absolutely terrified, of having family and friends find out they want sex also with certain men. Some bisexual men try to smother their desire with religion. Some bisexual men bully gays and yell faggots. Some bisexual men kill themselves slowly with booze. Some bisexual men kill themselves fast with a bullet. Some bisexual men murder lesbian, gay, bisexual, or trans persons. Many bisexual men live a double life. Some bisexual men have sex with many beautiful women. They hope their hot sex with beautiful women will shut off their strong attraction also for certain men. And until any man on earth who enjoys sex and romance with men can tell his family, his buddies, with no shame, no fear, no guilt, and until any woman on earth who enjoys sex and romance with women can tell her family, her friends, with no shame, no fear, no guilt. Our struggle for romantic freedom must continue. Watch the powerful movie Till, that's T-I-L-L, about the brutal torture and murder of black 14-year-old Emmett Till from Chicago when he visited relatives in the state of Mississippi in 1955. The two white men who brutally tortured Emmett Till and murdered him were found not guilty by an all-white jury. And years later, these two white men confessed to Emmett Till's murder in an interview for Look magazine. And these two men who murdered Emmett Till were paid $4,000 for that interview. Emmett Till's mother in Chicago made sure her beloved son's body was in an open casket. She wanted to show the world the evil of white racism. And our library system has 30 copies of that powerful movie on DVD. Till, T-I-L-L. I urge you to watch it. A new biography of Martin Luther King Jr. is entitled King, a Life. King, a Life. The book shows how human the prophet Martin Luther King Jr. was. As a youth, Martin Luther King Jr. once tried to commit suicide. As an adult, Prophet Martin Luther King Jr. was hospitalized several times for depression. Our library has 5 copies of that powerful new book, King, a Life, by Jonathan E-I-G, Jonathan E. When we're suffering in a crisis in our lives, we need to find other people who have faced and coped with that same kind of crisis. Many cops never beat up or shoot anybody. But sadly, many of those cops have seen some other cops wrongly beat up or shoot someone, but they often do not tell us what they saw other cops do. And sadly, they fear not getting promoted, or they fear getting moved to a lower job. And sadly, those cops who have never personally beat up anyone wrongly or shot someone fear being shunned or ostracized by other cops if they tell what they have seen some cops do. And sadly, they fear not being backed up by other cops in a crisis. These cops' fears shut them up about the evil beatings and shootings they have seen some cops commit. If I have promised to meet someone or to visit someone, I need to do it. I need to be there or to call the person if I'm not coming. How do I feel if someone promises to visit me but does not show up and does not call me. And I wait and wonder what happened. I love to cry. I love to cry if I'm deeply moved by a song, a movie, a memory. And crying from love and sorrow heals us, both men and women. I treasure my tears. Listen to Democracy Now! On KUNM 89.9 FM radio, Mondays through Fridays, 4 to 5 in the afternoon. And much better news on Democracy Now! Much better news reporting than most other radio and TV news. Democracy Now! Is on 1,500 radio and TV stations and the internet. I must make sure the man I have sex with wants to have sex with me. His not telling me no is not good enough. His not telling me no is not good enough. He needs to say and to mean yes if he wants to have sex with me. And no matter how many times he and I have had sex in the past, that does not mean he wants to now. I must never have sex with anyone on booze or street drugs because he cannot give consent. If the man decides during our sex for some reason he wants to stop, I need to stop, even if I'm close to coming. Over 50 years ago, September 11th, 1973, the United States backed the overthrow of the oldest democracy in Latin America. The oldest democracy in Latin America, the nation Chile, Chile. The United States backed the overthrow of that oldest democracy in Latin America. War criminals, U.S. President Richard Nixon, Henry Kissinger, then supported the bloody dictator Pinochet, who murdered, tortured, disappeared 40,000 people in Chile for the next 17 years. Smedley Butler was a U.S. Marine for 33 years, 1898 to 1931. Smedley Butler became a Major General, the Marines' highest rank at that time. 4 years after he retired, Smedley Butler wrote he had been a gangster for U.S. capitalism, robbing Mexico, Haiti, Cuba, Nicaragua, Honduras, Dominican Republic, China. Smedley Butler, this former Marine of 33 years as a Marine, wrote the book in our local library, War is a Racket. War is a Racket. He said, for a great many years I had a suspicion that war was a racket, but not until I returned to civil life did I fully realize it. Smedley Butler closed his book, To Hell with War. A boy told me he would kill in war because in war you can kill and not get in trouble for it. A soldier who received a Congressional Medal of Honor told his son that if he ever got into battle, to allow himself to be killed rather than live the hell of the memory of killing another human being. A World War II veteran said he had daily nightmares, remembering the faces of young German soldiers in the crosshairs just before he exploded their faces and heads. He could not get rid of those images in his mind and memory. When would it be right for any nation to murder our families? If never? How can it be right for the United States to murder their families? Colin Powell was very high in the U.S. military and government. Sadly, Colin Powell had the blood in his hands of millions of people in the Vietnam War, the Gulf War against Iraq, and the later U.S. war against Iraq under George W. Bush. Colin Powell was African American. Colin Powell grew up in New York City, and many of his neighborhood's kids became violent street gang members. Many of those kids in his neighborhood killed and died on the streets. But the awful, bloody truth is Colin Powell was heavily involved in the blinding, the crippling, the murder of far more human beings than all those violent street gang members combined. But because Colin Powell did his massive evil violence as a big shot in the U.S. military and U.S. government, millions of whites and blacks consider Colin Powell a success, a hero, a model of African American achievement. No one is born evil. Colin Powell was not born evil. Hitler was not born evil. Donald Trump was not born evil. But Colin Powell became a war criminal step by step as many people cheered him on. And sadly, Colin Powell celebrated black people, accepted and promoted in the most violent gang in the United States, the U.S. military. And many white U.S. presidents, many white U.S. generals are also war criminals. And for thousands of years, all empires on earth celebrate when former victims of the empire become partners in the empire's atrocities to other human beings. The U.S. empire celebrates when blacks and Chicanos and Native Americans become soldiers to rob and to murder, especially people of color in smaller nations. And watch the powerful documentary, Vietnam American Holocaust, narrated by Martin Sheen. It's on YouTube and on DVD. How the U.S. murdered over 3 million men, women, kids in Vietnam. An actual video on this Vietnam American Holocaust documentary. Actual video of Presidents Johnson and Nixon and their gangs talking about mass murder in Vietnam with no conscience, as if they were killing rats or cockroaches. And watch the excellent documentary Sir, No Sir on YouTube or DVD about the thousands of U.S. soldiers who protested the Vietnam War and helped to stop that damn war. As a person opposed to all war, I did 2 years of non-military community service, 1969 to 1971, under the draft in Arizona, and then finished the 2 years in Albuquerque. That's how I first came here, June of 1970. I've paid no federal income tax, not one damn bloody penny, for 45 years. 1/3 to 1/2 of federal income tax pays for U.S. wars, past wars, present wars, future wars. I refuse to pay to train and equip U.S. young men and women, largely people of color and low income, to become professional hired killers, to murder on command with no conscience. Our very close relatives, the bonobos apes, share over 98% of the genes that we human beings have. Over 98% of the genes that we human beings have. And these very close relatives, the bonobos apes, make love, not war. They settle conflicts with lots of sex, giving each other pleasure. No bonobo has ever been seen killing another bonobo in the wild or in a zoo. And sadly, many humans are addicted to guns, to bombs, to war. Often the older female bonobos are in charge of their communities. Rape and sexual harassment are rare among the bonobos. Males and females are bisexual. Lots of sex between males and females. Lots of sex between males and males. Lots of sex between females and females. Between old and young. Bonobos are the apes that touch each other's bodies the most. And when we humans do not get touched, we suffer. We often make others suffer. We need affectionate touch, hugs, or affectionate sex. Bonobos cooperate and share with each other. The bonobos teach us that passion and compassion are the wise way to live. Not grabbing more than we need, not grabbing and hogging more than our fair share. They teach us instead, make love, not war. Make love, not greed. I strongly thank Mark and Eddie and Travis for helping me scores of times with this program. And I thank you for watching and listening and for your many kindnesses on the street or wherever you see me. Thank you so much. To your health, my fresh piss.
Tell all you love that you love them so, because even if you do, they might not know, and one day we'll all be gone. Taste the wind, don't let it blow on by. Sing songs of love, let the music get you high, and when it's said and done, you'll know the sun will shine on. And when it's said and done, you'll know the sun will shine on. And when it's said